Thank you for coming. This is the serial users group, obviously. A lot of you sent in a lot of questions, which was really great. Thank you very much. I'm going to do my best to address all of those today. First, just going to do a couple sort of updates. If you got an agenda, we've covered the introduction. I should also say that we're doing something a little different today. We're streaming. So we have Renee as the lovely microphone person. So when you have a question, which feel free to raise hands, she will do her best to get the microphone to you as quickly as possible. And we'll follow that. Okay, so first agenda would be holding code cleanup. When we first migrated, we gave everyone with serials a couple different holding codes. Some of you have requested more. I think all of those requests have been handled. If you think you need more, send in requests. We're taking them all the time. They're really easy to create. So if you find that you need them, let us know. The cleanup part is more about item category 1. I don't know how many of you have noticed, but it wasn't populated immediately with periodical. So if you have been providing that category, you've had to do it manually, unless you've requested us to clean it up. I want to go ahead and just clean that up for everybody. Does anybody have any objections? Okay, good. So I will do that. That should probably happen this week or next. And you'll just see it magically appear. Okay, that's good. Okay, now I wanted to go over mark holdings. In training, we went over it a little bit, but it was sort of glossed over because it's a brand new concept. I've gotten a lot of questions about what they are, how they display in enterprise, how to maintain them, all that stuff. Can I just see, like, by nodding or hands, is anyone doing that? Is anyone really maintaining those? Is anyone not interested? Do you want me to just skip past it again?
I tried, but I don't think I did it right.
Okay, so that's.
What's the importance of maintaining it or updating it?
Okay.
I'm sorry, what's the importance of maintaining or updating the mark holdings?
So the importance is, it totally depends on your library and how you care about how the things display in enterprise and that kind of thing. All mark holdings really do is they display in the holdings tab in enterprise. Some of you might have noticed that if you have serials, you have these items attached, but there's this extra holdings tab, and you might not have anything listed for your library. That would be because you don't have a mark holdings record. That migrated over from that old lib has holding statement from Millennium. So if you had had one of those in your check-in record, it did come over and it created for you. So many of you probably do have a holding statement, but you just don't know where it's coming from. That's where it's coming from. You do have to maintain them manually. There are a couple different settings in your control record that determine if they update on their own, if you don't want to update, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to go over those settings. Okay. So I have a control record up here. And I'm going to click on the Mark Holdings tab. See all of these? These are all things that migrated for all of you. So all of these are holding statements that are going to display in enterprise. So I'm just going to click on one of them. This is what a mark holdings record looks like. You'll probably recognize this textual holding statement here. That's really what it does. You can manually put in a statement here, and this will display to a patron in enterprise. So you can even add another 866 tag, or there's another one that might be intended for that. Karen might know that. But you can actually speak to your public. So that's what it does. And that's what it looks like. In the Opac Display tab is where you say, do you want to automatically update mark holdings? And what that means is every single time you check in an issue, it'll create an 866 tag for that issue. So your public can see all of these just came in. Some people opt not to do it because if you then delete an issue, you have to go into the mark holdings record and also delete it there. So it's a lot of extra work, but it could be worth it to you depending on how you handle things in your library. You also have the option to just display recently arrived issues, which some people I think have gone in that direction. So you don't want the Mark Holdings individual statements for each issue, but you want your public to see, we just got these last 5 issues and this is the issue information. Okay. And that's really all it is, but I just kind of wanted to cover that. I think there was some confusion about it. Does anyone have any specific questions about it right now? What Mark Holdings are, what they do? Anne? That is, yeah. Let me just.
I just asked her to show how it appears on the public side.
Thank you. Oh, why is it not, Mr. Pop quiz, who knows the enterprise URL? We'll find out. Yeah, I'll go to. Yeah, that's true. What? There we go. Why do I make it more difficult for myself is a good question. Okay, so I'm just going to search any periodical title. It'd be good if I limited it. And this is not a good example. Let me find one. Here, let me do people. Yeah, there you go, thank you. Okay. So you see this holdings tab? That's where that's pulling from. So if, for example, your library kept 2 years and now you've changed to 6 months only and you want that to be updated, you either need to delete that Mark Holdings record if you don't want to maintain it anymore, or edit it in that 866 tag in your control records.
Once you edit the Mark records holding, it's permanent until you change it again.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And it only needs to be deleted if you decide to check update Mark Holdings under the
Exactly.
Opac.
Exactly.
Okay.
If you just want this kind of blanketed statement, and that's just always true, then you really are making one edit per control record if you're not updating them when you check in issues.
Now, if you check that box for update, but you say in the box 5,
2 separate things.
it's 2 separate things, you would still have to go in and delete. It doesn't just keep updating for 5.
Right, good point. Yeah, yes. How would you, so the question is, how would you delete one of the recently arrived issues that list in the Mark Holdings? Well, why don't I check in an issue and see what it does? Okay, I do have one. Okay, I'm just going to go into check-in. I do have some expected issues. Bring up my last one I touched. Checking it in. Okay. Okay. All right, now I'm just going back to my control record and modify control so we can see what that did to the Mark Holdings. Finding my library. Okay. It created this textual holdings tab right here. This is the issue I just checked in. So if this were, I'm on the test server right now, but if we were live in Enterprise, all of these would be listing in Enterprise as issues that have come in. To delete it, should be able to delete the whole thing. Good job. I should have candy. Okay, that's how you do it. Obviously, I don't do it every day, but yeah, you use your tools. Okay, any other questions about Mark Holdings? Okay. All right, moving right along. I just want to throw out there, we have some optional serial categories that can be used for statistics that we didn't configure at Go Live because it was a brand new kind of thing. So I just wanted to throw out there if anyone had any ideas, what would you like to have as a statistical category for your workflow? It would just be for reporting, that kind of thing. And just for reference, what I'm talking about is in this basic tab of all your control records, you have these. You can see right now they're not very helpful. Does anyone have any ideas of what they would like? Vicki?
Whether the subscription is a direct or if it's part of your EBSCO or
Okay.
whatever your jobber is.
Okay. That's a good idea. Does anyone kind of not really care about these? Do you do a lot of reporting on your control records? Or would you like to?
That's the only thing I want.
That's what you, all right, I have your name next to it. Direct. Okay. Joy?
This may be what Vicki said, but I was also taking notes, so I was only half listening, so I apologize. The only thing I could see where I would want to report is to see, basically our subscription ceased, and, we need to delete them.
Okay.
Or, we've deleted all the items and we forgot to delete the control record. That's the only report that I can think of that I would want to run.
Okay. Well, you do have this. This is actually another statistical category called status. It doesn't do any function. It's literally just there for reporting. So something like that sort of does already exist if you gave it a status of ceased. Now, of course, you'd have to actually do that in order to report on it, but that might be something that you might want to play around with. Okay. It's the question is if you do cease or anything like inactive, does it shadow it? And no, it's just staff view, so it doesn't control anything.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
At one point, there's a default where it puts I believe it's the category 1 as a stacks, and I'm drawing a blank. But we have some that we are in junior and in teen.
Are you talking about locations for the item record for the periodical? Is that in the holding code?
There's
Is that
something
what-
else for category 1, and I will think of it, so never mind.
Okay. Any other specifically about categories? If you think of things, send them in, Something might occur to you when you're just working and and these are just optional. We can also make them so, if you only are going to use one of these categories that we've created, we can hide the other options so you're not seeing a bunch of things in a drop-down menu that maybe Vicki wanted and no one else did. Sorry. I know. Okay, so we'll move right past that. Now we're to the meat of everything, the questions, tips, tricks, that kind of thing. Like I said, everybody sent in a lot of questions, which is really great. So some of them I'm going to demo, some I'm just going to reflect back to the group, see what you guys think. I've got a list. Okay. It should not. This was just a dummy record I created, so that is a very good point. It should be LC per. For the control records, yeah. Yeah, I just created this for training, so I didn't actually do that yet. So yeah, it does say LC per. That's what it should be in all your control records. Yes, for serials. Everything else would be Dewey, but anything that's maintained with serial control should be LC per. You know what it was? It was a slide in the PowerPoint that had Dewey.
Should we ask you if we need to change them? Because all of ours say Dewey now.
They'd have to be changed manually, so I can try to assist you with it. Okay. But yeah, you can start working on it. Yeah. Sorry about that. It's just the periodical class scheme for, yeah. I know it's confusing because it's LC and we're not most of us are in LC, but it's just what you need to use for serials. Yeah? Okay. 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 So someone asked if some of your magazine titles change names, how do you handle that? And the answer is just how you always did. Send pertinent photocopies to bib services, and they'll update that for you. Okay, let's see. You can just send in a help desk ticket. So just help at Swan Libraries. Yeah.
Can the control number be duplicated over to a new record? You have to do a whole new.
Let me think.
When you have a new record,
Yeah.
a title change, can
Can-
the control record be duplicated over, or do you have to create a whole new control?
How does that handle when you do it?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would be creating a new bib record, so there wouldn't be any control attached to it unless there's some way to copy and transfer it, but I
I don't
don't know
think you
what
can
the...
transfer control records. That's a very good question. Can bib services?
You can do duplicate control, I think,
You can do duplicate control.
but I don't know if it would go from one to the other.
Yeah, we'd have to play around. That's a really
Yep.
good question. Yeah. Okay. Okay, someone also asked if you could place holds on new non-circulating issues but not have them appear on the pick list. And unfortunately, the answer is no. In Symphony's mind, a hold is a hold, and it's valid no matter what. So it doesn't know that this might be a in-house hold, that kind of thing. So there's not a way to do that. Okay. Just want to pick. Okay, I want to talk about routing. Who here has set up routing? Okay. Who needs to set up routing? Okay. If you could email the ticketing system, I can help configure what prints on the slips. Can someone who has set up routing talk about how it's working for them or how it isn't working?
We set up our routing system according to each individual who would like a serial routed to them with their own unique library card number. You need to make sure that you check in the circulation area that they are eligible for routing. I don't remember the terminology, but you need to check the box that says that allow routing or permit routing. And then you go into the routing tab and you set the routing list accordingly. It is very simple. It's very easy and straightforward. So I highly recommend if you have individuals that want magazines routed to them to use this feature. It prints lovely. It works just great.
Okay. So routing is working. That's good news. Yes, Joy.
The routing is working for us.
Yeah.
The only glitch that we had is that mysteriously, for some reason, the patron in the staff member's patron record, the allow routing box would become unchecked.
Really?
Yes. And
Did
then we check it again, and maybe 3 weeks later or later that day, it disappears. And then we do it again, and it's 2 months later. Everything's fine.
We like to attribute those things to gremlins.
And then the other thing too is because on occasion is like my adult reference librarian will all of a sudden be on FOIA. She doesn't do anything with teens. So we're not quite sure how that happened because I'm the one who set up the routing. So at that particular time of day, depending upon the moon phase, it's like who knows what I did. But it's like, just kind of be aware, that there may be a few glitches. It could be just me.
Is anyone else experiencing that of the few that are doing routing? No? Okay.
Because then the only other thing I want to know is because her title, and if I haven't had a chance to go in and play, is that we do have different routing priorities. That, on some things, obviously we want the selector to get first.
Sure.
Whereas the assistant administrator and director should be last.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't gone in to
Yeah.
Or whether or not, I think what I've been doing is like I've just been putting them in the order that I want them, and I think they stay that way. But there again, I'm not doing the everyday check-in, so I'm not sure. So
Sure.
if you're going to write up directions, those are things I would also include.
Okay, great.
That's just my suggestion.
And Vicky, so does that mean you're doing rankings or permissions like that? Okay, and it works as you expect it to? Yes. Good news. Okay.
And one question with the rankings. So you can have the same person ranked differently per title? Awesome.
Okay. Okay. Any other kind of topics about routing right now? And like I said, send in help desk tickets, and we'll get that configured for you for those who need it, and get some instructions out there. Okay, someone asked in the Modify Title Subscription tab, will the fiscal cycle automatically update if you've changed and rolled over? And the answer is no. So whoever asked that question, it's no. But that affects you. Yeah. I double checked and tested it, and it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. It's a manual step. Okay, someone asked about adding an issue on the fly. Do you have to go back into modify control? Has anyone done that? Does anyone know the answer of whether you can do that or not? Or have you tried? So say you have an unexpected issue. Yeah. Yeah. Or a different issue. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Does anyone actually want to see that? Or was that, yeah? Okay. Okay, so I'm just in my control record. I have some expected issues. Okay. I'm going to go to check in. I'm going to bring up my control. And this is not the issue I want to receive right now, because I have a different issue. Instead of having to go back into modify control and adding an expected issue, which you would do using this tool, I can do it just right from check-in by clicking different issue. And I can do a special issue. And now I can either do it according to pattern or if it's truly a special issue. So if it's just, I don't know what number we were on, but the next number and I have to go and tweak things later, I can do it according to pattern. If it's special, then I just have the enumeration and the chronology to fill in because it's truly a special issue. You always have these receipt comments as well that you can put in. Does that answer that question? Okay. Any other questions about general check-in problems? How is it working for everybody? Is it, Rebecca?
Yeah, I have a question. We were actually working on the serial control last week for the nation, and it just was not allowing us to combine issues. There was no reason for it, and I just wondered if that was a known issue or if other people have experienced that, where it just gives you an error or it just doesn't do it, or...
You were in check-in?
Yeah.
So everybody should have this checked. This is the behavior side to allow combined issues. I'll double check your properties.
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
One of Joy's gremlins got it.
Okay, so it's under property.
Yeah, it might be. I've run into that too.
I have found that I would get an error message, but then I would just hit return and it would go to that box and let me do it. So I don't know.
Okay.
So you might try to do that and see if it works, because there are little glitches in it, so you can try that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually did run into something with that. Actually, the first day of serial training, I had no problem combining issues. The second day, using the same computer, it wouldn't let me. So that was a good training opportunity. But yeah, I'll double check your properties. A lot of stuff. We'll point back to that. And someone else asked, what kind of properties have you played with? So your defaults and that kind of thing in the wizards for serial control. Has anyone done anything that they found really useful that they'd like to share? Or I mean, there aren't a whole lot of defaults for serials, but sometimes you can save yourself a couple steps by doing a couple things. Let's see what's in here. So these are your defaults for check-in. Stuff that's going to be a little more impactful would be the combine issues options, that kind of thing. What gets carried over, what gets combined, what doesn't. Anybody have anything? All right, feel free to play around and report back. This is properties, so good question. Every wizard has properties. Some are more powerful than others. So I just right-click on check-in and select properties, and you'll see this defaults tab. That's all you'll see. The other stuff is sysadmin level. But sometimes they can be really powerful. Like, for example, I mean, this isn't a big thing, but if you don't care about mark holdings, you never want to see them, you don't want anything to do with them, if you uncheck this box, you won't see it when you look at your control record. So you can do some customization. Yep. Okay. All right, moving on to the next. Someone asked about class scheme. What's the correct one? We covered that. That's LC per. So that's what everyone should be using. Another interesting thing someone reported, I don't know how many of you have had this happen, but searching by the standard number if there's an X for a periodical gives an error message. Has anyone, I don't know who sent that in, but has anyone experienced that? So by that I mean I'm looking up a control and I'm choosing this as my index. Oh, well, you have to do that as well. That is a good point. That's fine. So it'll say control not found. That's just a bug. I don't know who sent it in, but just an update, it's a bug. That's actually Rolling Stone, but it won't retrieve it if there's an alpha character for some reason. So we do have that reported. I tried that. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions about just like maintaining control records? Joy.
We experienced this problem last week where there's something that we use the serial control record for, but it comes out annually. And when we went to generate predictions, it gave us an error message. So we had to do it individually from the other one.
Okay. What did the error message say? Do you remember? No? Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Subdivision does not exceed, yes. That usually means there's a problem with your chronology that's selected. It usually means you're not choosing the exact chronology format that it requires. Sometimes it means continuous isn't checked in your patterns tab. It's common error message, so I'd have to play around. Do you remember which one was it?
It was emergent.
Okay.
Yeah, that was emergent dividend or dividend
Okay.
record semi-annual.
Okay. Let me write that down.
And then one other thing that we experienced, because I was helping to set up some of the control numbers or control records, that with some things when we didn't want to use volume because we thought it'd be confusing, we wanted to use issue, it required us to put the period afterwards
Okay.
before we put the number in.
Okay.
And then there was one other title that I think I sent you the directions on how I did it, that I was so proud of myself when I figured it out, because it wasn't quite a quarterly, but it was slightly different, and I figured out how to do the pattern, because of course the help didn't tell me what it wanted.
Okay.
So
do you remember what you had to do?
I can look it up because
Okay.
I put it on my iPad.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
Yes, you did custom.
Yeah, it was a custom
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
Custom works great.
Custom is great. It doesn't allow spaces, and that's the one thing that I run into, because some of these publication patterns can be really challenging. The omit issues helper becomes your best friend. Anna?
If I've got a combined issue, then it gives me a month prediction for the expected dates, and then it skips 2 months. So the expected date doesn't match the date that is on the issues that I'm expecting. And secondly, when, like, I've got 26 issues when I was expecting 52, and I suddenly have to go back and redo them all, is there a way to update them all? Or if you delete them all, then it wants to start in 2016 instead of where you
Right,
left
it
off.
remembers where you left off with generating
There's not an
predictions.
easy way to reset?
No, I mean, I think it's always best to start with a smaller number of predictions to avoid that, because things do change so frequently. It can be frustrating, I know, because even if you delete them, you go to generate more, and it's remembering the old information. It's just the way the system works. And you can't edit them in a bunch like you're asking. You have to do it individually, or, yeah.
I'm finding that if there's like 10 per year and say December, January is combined and June, July, I'll go in the omit helper and I will omit January and I will omit July. And then when the predictions are generated, I will go in and manually say December, January, and
combined.
June or July. And that takes care of it.
Okay.
That was the workaround that I found.
And that sounds like a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yes.
I have a question with setting up some of the control records. All of ours have a special instructions pop-up that comes up, but no actual instructions with them. So like they're not required for anything, but they pop up for every magazine when I check them in.
That could pull from a bunch of different areas. Is everybody having that? Is that like a migration thing? It's a blank note that came over, and if you delete it, it goes away, but you have to manually do it. That would be that, yeah.
Where can I find that to delete it?
Would it extended info in the control record? Is that?
I think so.
Yeah, so it would be. This tab. So somehow, yeah, something I put in there. Thanks for reporting it. Okay. Okay. Any questions specifically about like patterns, publication cycle? I had a couple come in, like how to do some complicated ones. Does anyone want to share any like success stories of like what you've shared? Is anyone really using custom more than anything?
I had the problem with it not using, like fantasy and science fiction, it's numbers 1 and 2. I found the same thing as just to generate the predictions and go in manually and say 1 and 2, and then they come out perfectly, but you do have to do it manually. But there's only 6 per year, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
And then I was going to ask you, do you have to do that all over again, right? There's no memory of the pattern.
Not if you've changed it manually.
Uh-huh.
So it'll remember the original, but it won't know to combine it. So it'll remember whatever's in the patterns tab. That doesn't go away.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
But where you went in and modified each expected prediction, that you'd have to redo.
Now, if your volume changes mid-year, if it's 52 issues and that changes, is there going to be a memory of that?
That the volume will change mid-year?
Yeah.
That would be in
or
your
you just
limit?
say 26 issues, 26 per volume?
Yeah. You would just put a limit here.
In
or,
your
you know,
limit, right. Okay.
Yeah.
But if it's off by 1 or 2, there's really no way to, I've been having to delete all the predictions and then kind of start over. Is that, do you have any better news for me than that, or is that what we have to do?
No.
Okay.
I
didn't think so.
Deleting and recreating is a common thing.
Okay.
Again, I kind of think starting with a smaller number of predictions just saves you a hassle.
I agree.
In the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause that way, at least if you have to delete and recreate, you're not tearing your hair out, hopefully.
Yeah, I was just going to say that with the way that the periodicals have been changing, because we don't check in the newspapers CERC does that I've even told them, don't do your full year, because if something changes, then
That'd be a
you've got to
nightmare.
go through and delete everything. Do, 2 weeks, or, in a monthly, do 6 months.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because it's just, easier than having to page through everything to delete everything.
Definitely. Anyone else with like any tips and questions? Yes? Sorry.
What is the limit for? Because when I'm doing the serials, if the number is greater than the limit, it'll pop up and say that the subdivision is not correct. And do I have to always say continuous for every magazine, or is it just?
Continuous would be if that level of enumeration continues to increment. So like newspapers, usually that kind of thing. So if at the end of the volume, if there are 10 issues, and if the numbering restarts at 1 for volume 2, then you don't want continuous checked.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that if I put in like 999, it will work. But if I have less than the number, like the volume and number, if the number is less than the number that's in the limit, it won't work at all.
Right, I think that's what you're coming up against. It's the issue of the continuous.
Right. Okay.
Because if it's past that limit, like you're saying,
Right.
then it's going to give you an error message.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question about the distribution.
Yep.
We have 2 magazines, Best Review and also Consumer Reports, that we circ one and just give the other to reference.
Mm-hmm.
And Karen actually had to delete one because it didn't enter correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like that's not working.
Do you barcode that second copy that you have to
We
reference? So do you have 2 holding codes or 2 distributions in
We
the
have one
distribution
holding
tab?
code, and the other one just says, it says enter, or copies received 2, and add to the catalog 1,
Okay.
and it seems to be causing issues.
Okay. It can't do both? Has anyone else run into that?
Yeah.
If you do the distribution, you have to add a second line if you want it to add it. We barcode everything, so it would prompt for the second one. So it'll never prompt for it if you don't barcode.
Has anyone tried to do something where you create 2 different distribution lines instead of saying 2 expected, 1 of each, and 1 created and 1 not? I know that sounds kind of redundant, but I'm just wondering if anyone's tried that. Does it work?
Yeah, we have selection journals that we'll add one to the catalog and just send one upstairs to the reference department. And so it permits us to do that just fine.
Okay, so Jen was saying that works.
Yes. Yes.
In the distribution tab, I can show you where it is.
Are they both barcoded?
In his scenario, when 1 is and 1 isn't.
Okay.
And so
we're fine
is
with
that the
but
same?
What about when you barcode 2 of the same?
Well, then you would have 2.
2 serial records.
Well, you'd have 2 to add. In your distribution tab.
Right.
If you're going to barcode both, then you
Right.
want to make sure this matches the number of copies.
What we tried to do was to do that, to have 2 copies, and it didn't work.
It has to be 2 serial controls.
Really?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
I've never had that happen.
They give us error messages over and over.
Do you know what the error messages said? I mean, I know it's probably hard to remember.
No idea.
So who else is doing that and it's working?
It's working. Okay.
So you have 2 copies expected, 2 copies to add.
Yeah, in order to receive it, we had to actually create two records.
2 different control records.
Right, but it would make
It
sense.
shouldn't work that way.
It should make sense to just do 2 copies and 2 in the.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just add another distribution. As long as you've got your.
Okay, what you
She means add another.
You can't do it on this one because you're only subscribing to one copy.
Right.
So you need to have a control record where it's set up to have 2 copies, and in your distribution tab, okay, you have to add another distribution line.
Right.
Well, that's modify.
Yeah, I don't know
It's
why
not
it's grayed
active
out.
for some reason in here. Ours were active.
I'm wondering if this is gremlins and properties.
If the 2 distributions is working, could somebody write up directions and share that? Because Sam, based on our conversation when we ran into this issue with Consumer Reports and People Magazine, we have separate control records because they go to different collections.
Well, that was because you wanted your call numbers to be different, right?
Right, and that's the thing,
And
yeah,
then
we
in
need
that
separate
case,
call
that's
numbers.
true. Yeah. In that case, that's true, but I'm interested to see why that's happening. It's grayed out because I am only getting one. So the system knows that I'm only getting 1 copy, so it's not going to allow me to create another distribution. So if I change this to 2, now it's active. Yeah, they're tied together in that way. Okay. Any other questions before I move on to the list? Yes. Karen.
I wonder if anyone else has the same problem. I've come across like an example is New York Times book review where it's just a date. So on the patterns, you uncheck the volume and the number. There are no volume or numbers, just a date. But then when I go to call number maintenance to put in my price and the call number appears, the date is twice.
Has anyone else had that happen? I think that's going to be tied back to this in the Opac Display, the form of name to display. It says it's titled Opac Display, but it'll affect some display issues and workflows as well, which is a little misleading. I would check that, and then see if that select a different setting. Even though you don't have the enumeration, I would think you need the chronology to just be bulleted. I'm going to guess it says both. So give that a try. If it doesn't work, let me know. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Yeah.
When you put the month and the year, you have to go back after you enter it and put in the month and the year because it doesn't show up. Is that something you'll have to do all the time, and then the price too?
In your item record?
In call number and maintenance.
So in the call number record, you're saying that, I would have to see an example, because no, it shouldn't be that way. It should fill in for you. You shouldn't have to add that back in. It might be tied to the setting as well.
Okay.
Can you send me an example? And then I can do some research?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so someone asked about Roman numerals. And that it doesn't accept them. Has everyone else experienced this? It's just the way the system works. It needs a digit. It doesn't consider it valid. I know. Has anyone else played around with not generating predictions and instead of just creating them on the fly and check-in? Yes.
I do all the magazines with no predictions.
So you do all of them with none?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so that actually might have something to do with the issue you said earlier too. So yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that. But do you like it otherwise, other than the double entering?
It works well.
Okay. Everyone else uses predictions? Okay. A complicated,
Yeah, sometimes one has an issue, so it's just easier to check it in without.
Yeah.
Like library journal and bookmarks, we just give to our CERC manager, but I have to check them in, but for some reason it won't allow me to like change some things in the control record, so I just do it without predictions so that I just get it out of the way.
Okay. Okay, what about claiming. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? I know some of you have reached out to me about setting up EDI. Yes? Oh, great.
So, if predictions are not what we want, i.e. combined issues, new volume numbers, can just modifying them be sufficient while we are checking them in? And if so, why can't we modify the issue while we're right there checking it in? Why do we have to go back to the modify wizard to change it? Or am I missing an easier way to do this?
Does anyone have any ideas? Okay. That was a long question. So part of it was, why can't you modify when you're checking an item in? Yeah, I was just double checking. Yeah, you can. Thank you. Yeah, so that you can do. I thought you could. The other part of the question was related to not generating predictions and instead combining on the fly. Does that sound right to everyone else that was here listening? If you don't have anything predicted, you can't combine issues, correct? So I'm not sure I understood the question. If they can send in another chat if I did a really bad job of answering that. Sorry. It's harder over the computer. Okay, yes.
I have a claims question.
Great.
I set up with EDI. A couple of questions. One is, there's a manual claiming you can do in the claims tab.
Yes.
Am I duplicating things by doing that? If I see something hasn't come in, should I just be letting the report do that according to the settings that I've made?
Yes.
Because otherwise they're going to get it twice?
Yes, if you, yeah.
Okay.
If you, as far as late issues, as long as your settings are correct in the control record, I would say let the reports do that for you. We have what's called a prediction as late report, which runs nightly.
Mm-hmm.
So that should automatically update your claim information correctly. It'll create your claim records for you if items are late.
Okay, so
for
I
stuff
don't
like
need to do
damage
it
or-
manually.
Right.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And also, when I get the claim report by email, I have paragraphs of gobbledygook before I get to the claims at the bottom. So how do I get rid of all that and just see the claims?
Are you referring to like the log where it tells
Yes.
you what it did?
Yes.
Did you, when you set it up, did you, there should be like a view log checkbox or something when you're
I
doing it? Did you
unchecked
try to uncheck
that,
it?
and it's still giving me
It's
a
still
lot of
giving it
junk.
to you?
Yeah.
Is anyone else experiencing this, or are you running any kind of claiming reports? Because it should go away, but I'll have to play around with it.
Okay.
Do you have a template in the reports for that, or do you create it on the fly every time? Probably a template. Okay, let me just make note of that. Now, is this the print claims notice, or is this
The once a month claim notice?
Okay. Just want to make sure I get that right. Thank you. Okay, anyone else setting up EDI? Okay. Vicki?
Is there an EDI reporting claiming set up for dummies out there somewhere?
Not yet.
We're not doing it yet, and I'm very afraid.
Who's furthest along? It sounds like, yes?
When we do the claims, we email them to somebody, but we run the report and then we have to go back and make sure that it's actually the right one that we're claiming. So I don't know if there's an easier way to do it than actually have to be going back and forth when you run the report.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
it gives you, because when we do the report, it gives you everything, and some of the dates aren't accurate, so it's still saying that the item is late, even though it hasn't come in yet. It's not ready to come in as
Okay.
yet.
Is anyone else experiencing that? Okay. It might be a setting in your control record that might not be completely correct. I could double check. Is this with all of your titles, or is it just some?
Some of them.
Just some?
Yeah.
If you could send me an email with the titles,
Okay.
and I can just do some looking around.
Okay.
Thanks.
I have it set up just to, like, I don't use EDIs. I just use the claim notices report, and I
Yeah.
have it sent to a email to EBSCO, and they get the claims that way, so that I didn't have to use the EDI.
Yeah.
I talked to the woman who runs our stuff, so you don't have to worry about all that craziness. And then it runs every month. I do it the first of every month, and I get an email to myself so that I know what we're expecting, so that I can stay in touch with them so they know it, and you don't have to worry about all of the confusing, scary EDI stuff.
Okay.
I will say that in the manual that I had, the EBSCO claim number, our rep called me and said that was an old number and there's a new email.
Okay.
So I don't know what it is offhand, but I can send that to you.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that the Cersei Dynex one? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So they must just have older information. Okay. Any questions about claims other than that? And it sounds like everybody's kind of got their own workflow. Some might want to set up a different workflow. Someone asked about how, for the libraries that are updating Mark Holdings records, but from earlier, it sounds like most of you aren't. So I think we already covered that. Okay, someone else asked if there is a alternative record-keeping software for serials. Does anyone use anything else other than the serial control module, or is looking into using something else? Does anyone else find it like just not, you like to mill serials a lot better? Any specific pitfalls? Any workarounds? All right. Someone asked about setting up routing slips without a user ID, and it's not possible. Yes?
Okay, the question is, if the wrong issue pops up in check-in, I click different issue, and then choose modify issue and check it in, and then go back and delete the wrong issue. Is that okay?
It's not that. No, I got it. I would say it's not the intended workflow. You should just say a different issue and not modify the issue. But it will work. It just might take extra steps. But I'm not going to say it's not okay. I don't make those judgments. Okay. Okay, does anyone have any, we're almost at the end of the list of questions, and I'm just going to open up the floor. But does anyone have any tips or anything to share about printing spine labels with periodicals? Is anyone doing that? No? Is everyone curious about it? Was it your question?
It's my question.
Have you talked to Dave?
No.
Okay.
No, not yet.
He might have a suggestion. Okay. And that's about it with the questions. If I missed a question that you sent in, please ask it now. Otherwise, let's just open up the floor. Anything else you want to talk about? Yes.
We're trying to figure out why, after we modify a record, check in some issues, and then we go back to check in, there are several control numbers, more than one. And so the staff has to go into that control to figure out which one is the correct one.
You've got duplicated controlled records?
Right.
Is that just certain titles, or are you seeing that a lot?
They're saying it's certain titles.
They all belong to your library, right?
Yes.
Do you happen to know offhand if the control IDs start with a C?
I'm not sure.
I know that's like a really specific question.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out if they were migrated or
Okay.
if somehow staff accidentally created additional ones.
Yes, and if staff accidentally created additional ones.
You can remove the bad controls. Yeah.
Okay,
You
but
should-
how would they have?
How would they?
Have by create control? Is that how they would have
Yes.
created
Yeah.
instead of modify?
Yeah. At some point, someone either created it in Symphony or multiples existed before the migration and then came in.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, when you mentioned about mark records, and if we're deleting issues,
Yes.
we have to go in and delete in the mark holding record?
If you have this box checked,
Right. Could that?
that shouldn't duplicate a control.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking maybe that was the problem, but that's probably not
It
it.
shouldn't be. All that
Okay.
box checked should do is just create
Okay.
another 866 or 863 tag. Yeah.
All right. We have
In the
more
mark
than one
holdings.
person modifying.
Okay.
And so there's like 3 people. So it might.
It might be just a staff training
Yes.
issue.
Okay. I just thought maybe someone could give me a
Yeah.
clue. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, another question. When the new year of a subscription comes out, do we have to start over and set up a new control and delete the previous issues?
If
She's
it's
shaking her head no.
and Karen can jump in, but if it's one that Bib Services creates a new title or bib record, then you would have to create a new control on that new title. But if it's one that's an open-ended publication, so just 1999 to, and it hasn't reached its end yet, you don't have to recreate that. That will stay there for you.
That is correct.
That is correct. Thank you for backing me up. Okay, good questions. Any other questions? Yes.
When we've got it selected that when we check in an item, check in an issue, it creates an item. Do we have options to set a template to say all the adult ones are going to go at category 1 is going to be periodical, but a junior title, we want category 1 to be junior. That's the, where's that drawing from, and do we have access to it?
The distribution tab. So that's where holding codes come into play. If you expect to, I'm just going to modify this distribution. Oh, I have to save it first. So if one goes to, I see all these holding codes here, you obviously only see your own. If one is going to go to adults, sorry, and one's going to go to a juvenile, if you have those holding codes, you would just need to list each separately. Is that not your question? Yeah. Okay.
Holding code that I have for the junior and the teen are not set the way we would like them in our library. Is that a question to submit?
Yes.
Okay.
I can fix it for you. I can create additional ones or modify the ones you have, yeah. Let me know which ones you're not using, and then what you might need them to look like, and then what brand new ones you might need.
Okay, another question.
Okay.
Is there any possible way that our library can be at the top of the list when checking in our issues rather than scrolling to find ourselves?
Does anyone? It would be nice. It's alphabetical. But, well, yeah, if you scope, it'll bubble to the top. That's a good point, yeah. Did someone say change properties?
When the modify control box
That's what I'm
comes
not
up,
sure. Yeah.
if you click on the column at the top where the library code is, if you click on it, it goes into alphabetical order.
Yeah.
Well, basically, the other thing is, why do we have to see who else owns it? Why do we have to see other libraries' control records?
Yes, Jen.
The display control feature is useful to see how other libraries have created their patterns and so forth. But for the
True.
modified control, since we're only able to control our own or
Yeah.
modify our own,
Right.
the other libraries' listing should not be there. It should
Yeah,
just
it
be our
lists-
own
it
under
just doesn't
certain
let you
wizards.
modify.
So.
Yeah. That permission is set at a different level, so it's not going to say in display you can see them, and then in modify you can't. It's just you can see other people's. So if you don't ever want to see anyone else's control record ever, that might be something we could explore. And that list may not appear, that we haven't tested it yet, but that's set at the library level. So it would be for each library they can say, we only want to see our own, we don't want to see anyone else's. But in Jen's example where she looks at someone else's control just to get a reference, you wouldn't be able to anymore. So if someone is interested in that, you can, send in a help ticket. We'll see what we can do. It's possible.
You may have already answered this question. For the current copy, we don't circulate the current copy, but everything shows that we do. So has there been a holding code established for that, or will there?
You should have a holding code, and you might not have gotten one at the migration, but I can create one for you, that has a periodical _N as the item type, which is non-circulating system-wide. So when you check in issues, it would get that item type, and that item type doesn't circulate. We can set that up for you. Just send an email, and then you just have to swap it out in your control records. And then when the item can circulate again, you'd have to go into manually catalog and change the type back to periodical. There have been questions about the circulate box in an item record, and how does that relate to circulating versus non-circulating? And the answer is it will make it non-circulating, but if you're already giving it periodical N as an item type, it's just an extra step you don't need to do. So there are two different ways to do it. You could give all periodicals item type of periodical and then manually go into each item and check that or uncheck that box that is marked circulate, so that item won't circulate. Or you can let the holding code do the work for you and then just edit the type later. So, I mean, the first way I think is a little less clicky, but it's totally up to you. Yes.
So I just want to be clear. If we have the holding code of periodical new, I don't have to uncheck that circulate box, even though...
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've mapped it so that item type won't circulate.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. I'm glad I covered it. We have another question.
User listening in. When deleting oldest issue, whether from the tree or list of received issues, I have found that you cannot delete it, but instead I have to unreceive the issue in the Received tab, then go back to the Expected tab to delete the prediction. Is there another way to do this?
So the question is how do you delete a received issue in the received list in addition to deleting the item in the item tree?
She's found she can't delete it from the tree or the list of received. She has to unreceive the issue.
Yeah.
In the Received tab, and then go back to the Expected tab to delete the prediction.
Right.
So is there an easier way to do it?
No, unfortunately. Simple answer. I mean, you have to unreceive it to delete it. Are you making a puzzled face? Is that incorrect? Okay, sorry. Didn't mean to call you out. Just yes. Oh. I will be trying. Okay. Who has the microphone? Oh, sorry. Oh, and Anna next.
Now, this might not be what she's looking for.
Okay.
But couldn't you just check it out to discard?
You could.
And then you don't have to unreceive it.
Right, right. And if you're not updating mark holdings, then your public doesn't see that statement. So they, and if you're deleting the item's deleted. Yeah. So it would remain in the received tab, but if it doesn't matter to you, staff can only see it, that might be fine.
So if you check it out, right now I'm doing the unreceive, deleting the prediction, because we delete like the last, we only keep it for a certain period of time.
Yes.
So every time I'm deleting, I'm unreceiving, deleting the prediction, and then deleting it out of the catalog, the individual item.
Yeah.
So to avoid that, I can just check it out to discard, and it's all going to be updated?
The received will stay, that issue will still list in received. But if...
And then we don't want that, I guess.
So, yeah, if you want your control record to be that, then you, those are the steps.
She does the magazines.
Okay.
So we're trying to figure out, okay, the control number. Was it generated by the system, or did she supposed to have generated her own control
The control
number?
ID?
Yes.
It will auto-generate depending on your properties. So mine, this is an auto-generated number. I just created it, and this is what it gave me. You can keep it like this. You might see a lot of them have a C in front of them. That's because that was Millennium's auto-generated convention. So that's what migrated over. You can change it. It's completely optional.
So you can change it to anything you want it to be.
Yep.
If you no longer have one, because she has some magazines that no longer have any,
Okay.
she can create her own.
Yeah, she can just go right into this basic tab, and where it says new control ID, or it might say control ID after I save it, you just type another one.
And when she gets ready to enter a magazine, she uses that control number to
locate the control.
locate instead of typing in the title.
Yeah, you could do that.
But I do type in the title and that works fine. That's
Yeah, that's completely up to you and your workflow. I've seen some people are just letting it auto-generate. Some people are using their library 3-letter code and then something that identifies the title after. It's just up to you.
The second box down, something ID.
Subscriber ID.
Yeah. Okay, sometimes that's filled in. I've never touched it, but sometimes it's filled in, sometimes it's not. Is that something the system did, or do I need to do it, or is that useful, or?
You don't have to put it in. It's just the ID of that periodical title. It will sometimes pull from the bib. So, like for example, when I created this, it pulled that. I didn't know that. It just did it for me. So that's why you'll sometimes see it do that. Yes, Anna.
A follow-up to the question that was logged in. I asked you in an email a few weeks into the system if we could delete old received issues, and I think you did add a gadget to our system. And I've gotten really lazy about using it, but I want to say it's in the received tab.
You're right, and I'm so glad you said that. See, this is a good lesson. Properties, there are millions of them. Delete received issues is a behavior. So I can make that simpler for you. Just send in a help desk ticket. So that will be when you have to unreceive, then delete the prediction. I can actually configure it so that you can delete it right from the received column. Thank you. I'd totally forgotten that. Great.
I just saw this question. Do we have to delete the discarded issues from the control record?
I think this is kind of the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So send in an email if you want to delete it from the received. Otherwise, you'd have to unreceive, delete the prediction. But you don't have to delete them from the control record if you don't care. It will still list there, but there won't be an item record anymore. That's good. Okay. Anyone else?
On our newspapers, I did check the box for it to be visible in the Opac.
Okay.
Now, the ones that have the volume information along with the date came out fine. But the ones that don't have a volume information,
The date
just have
duplicated?
date, and I did check just chronology.
Mm-hmm.
It comes up weird in Enterprise. It gives it like a funny number and then the date.
Okay. Can you send me an example? I remember an issue similar to this when we originally had our training about a year ago. So I think it might be a known issue. I want to double check. So yeah, if you could send me, that'd be great. Okay. Any other questions? Vicki?
I know, big surprise, right? Is anyone doing EDI ordering? I know some are doing claiming, but how about ordering? And were you before? Okay. Thanks a lot.
That's a no. Okay. We've been about an hour and 15, so it's a little early, but if we don't have other questions, I can let you go. But I just want to make sure. Anything else you want to cover today while we're all here as a group? Okay. I guess that's a no. Thank you all for coming. I hope you found it informative.